I was elated when we first dated, thought you were sort of sophisticated. Every damn thing that you articulated showed you was highly educated. You asked me to stay, but I said, what for? I turned and I walked right out that door. You ain't gonna blackmail me no more, ain't gonna blackmail me no more. Now, my next guest tonight is a little known, rather obscure folk singer from Australia, Raymond, who has just released his new CD, Who Needs Reality? Good evening, Raymond. What kind of introduction is that? Little known, obscure? Well, your name's not exactly on everyone's lips, is it? But perhaps that's about to change. Now you've got your new CD on CD Baby, you might actually sell a few albums. It'd be nice to cover the costs of producing it, that'd be a first. I believe this is actually your 5th CD, is that right? I suppose it's really my 6th, because I did one with Lou Dite in Canada. A collection of popular American folk songs that people could sing along to. This one is very different then. For a start, it's all original songs, isn't it? Yes, it is, but it does have something in common with the one I just mentioned, because Lou Dite sings and plays along on several of the tracks, and so does Ukulele Katie, who was visiting from the States. Okay, Raymond, let's talk about some of the songs on the album. There are 17 songs altogether, which seem to cover quite a diverse range of subjects, from war to religious hypocrisy to animal rights. Is there any kind of overriding theme here? Well, I've tried to tie them together by using Who Needs Reality as the title song. Some of these songs are very much about the harsher realities of life, dealing with social problems such as domestic violence, sexual abuse of children, and the exploitation of cheap foreign labour, especially in Asia and the Middle East. So these are all things you've had personal experience of, are they? Well, they're issues that everyone is aware of, though we sometimes tend to sweep them under the carpet. Another Little Murder is actually inspired by a book called Just Another Little Murder. It was written by Phil Cleary, who I used to teach with at Sunshine West. He's quite well known in Victoria, firstly as a footballer, but also as a politician with a great interest in social justice. But this book tells a very personal story about his sister who was physically abused and eventually murdered by her partner. And it examines the attitudes of society and the law to domestic violence. You seem to have a few songs here about abusive relationships. The Collector is another example. Well, yes, it's about the relationship between a kidnapper and his victim. I like to draw on literature for some of my songs, and this one is obviously based on John Fowles' brilliant novel, The Collector. I don't think I've actually read that one. Of course you have. You may remember. Well, just to jog your memory, there are 2 parts to this novel. In the first part, the kidnapper narrates from his own very warped point of view how he kidnaps the girl and manipulates her into carrying out his wishes. The way he tells it, everything he does is quite sane and normal and reasonable. It's only when we get to part 2, which is told by his victim, that we realise the full horror of the helpless situation she finds herself in. Anyway, my song is based on the first half of the story, and I've tried to bring out the irony of the narrator's view of what he's done, as in the original story. Another song you've stolen from literature, also about a manipulative relationship, is If You Love Me. Yes, I taught Shakespeare's Macbeth for many years, and this song is about the Lady Macbeths of the world. You know, the age-old trick, if you love me, you'll do whatever I want. What she wants being, in this case, the murder of King Duncan. Yes, though, you know, it's a bit like blaming Eve for giving Adam the apple. Macbeth doesn't really need too much pushing to kill Duncan and take over the throne. But these are fictional stories. What do they have to do with reality? Who needs reality? I see literature as one of the means by which we rise above the harsher realities of life. A way of dealing with the problems and making sense of them. You could say that about art in general. I know you have a keen interest in the art form known as Surrealism. I love Salvador Dali's paintings. Now, that's obvious from the cover art of the CD. You have a picture of a burning giraffe, which was one of Dali's recurring themes. Yes, I've always wanted to sing a song about a burning giraffe. Haven't you? Of course I have, but that's only because I'm you. It's not easy to find songs about burning giraffes though, is it? You're right about that. So I had to write one myself. It's a kind of tribute to Dali and the Surrealists in general. Yes, I noticed references to Max Ernst and René Magritte, both great Surrealist artists. And of course, Louis Buñuel, the wonderful Surrealist film director. You actually refer to 3 of his films, including the very early short film that he made with Salvador Dali, An Andalusian Dog. You can see Surrealism as another way of dealing with reality. It's a kind of philosophy of the basic irrationality of life. Try to make sense of something like the Marx Brothers or Monty Python and you just lose the whole point of it. Let's have a look at a bit of this song. You recorded this one with Lou Dite and Ukulele Katie, didn't you?
All tried together discreetly with charm, the exterminating angel to cause us no harm. Max Ernst brought in Harpo, which upset the staff. They threatened to extinguish my burning giraffe. I'll buy you a beer or you can share my carafe, but please don't extinguish my burning giraffe. Casually glanced at the watch on my wrist, and I saw to my sorrow how memories persist. I squashed a few ants with my fingers of clay as the hands of my watch began melting away. I'll buy you a beer or you can share my carafe, but please don't extinguish my burning giraffe.
I can't say I understood much of that. Exactly. If it all made sense, it wouldn't be Surrealism. There are other songs on this album that also have strong elements of Surrealism. Yes, it's one of the ways I was influenced by Dylan's work. So many of his songs are pure Surrealism. Your song Pollyann, another song about a male-female relationship, is an example, I think. You might have noticed the tune is quite similar to Burning Giraffe. Pollyann actually began as part of the same song and then branched off and went its separate way. One thing the 2 songs still have in common is the image of the melting watch, which of course is from Salvador Dali. Yes, the persistence of memory. What about Blackmail? That's also rather surrealistic, to some extent. It's another one about a manipulative relationship, but with some reference to wider issues such as the population explosion. And the way it's going to be, that's also about a relationship where the man insists on getting his own way. Nothing surrealistic about that one. It's kind of an attempt at a country and western style song, but with a twist at the end. The guy turns out to be not quite as macho as he thought he was. That's another one you recorded in Canada with your YouTube friends. Let's have a look at it.
You tell me please don't drive so fast, I don't like to see other cars zoom past. If you had your way I'd be driving so slow, we'd be an hour late everywhere we go. That's the way it's gonna be, babe, if you wanna stay with me. You gotta be tough, you gotta treat 'em rough, that's the way it's gotta be. You tell me to turn the music down, you tell me not to dress like a circus clown. I'll do this my way or I won't do it at all, and I won't come crawling at your beck and call. That's the way it's gonna be, babe, if you wanna stay with me. You gotta be tough, you gotta treat 'em rough, that's the way it's gonna be. You say you don't like any of my friends, you want to go home before the party ends, but you don't want to go back home on your own, and you just don't trust me to stay here alone. That's the way it's gonna be, babe, if you want to stay with me. You gotta be tough, you gotta treat 'em rough, that's the way it's gonna be.
To get back to one of your more realistic songs, what about God Bless the Domestic Servant? That comes from my experience living in Singapore and Hong Kong. In Asian countries, it's the normal thing for families to employ a domestic servant to look after the children, do the cleaning, cooking, pretty much anything else they're asked to do. These are mainly young ladies from poorer countries, such as Indonesia and the Philippines, who work for very low wages, which are actually worth a lot more when they send them back home to their families, of course. Some of these people are treated very well, but you always hear stories of abuse. The song tries to get across the hardships these women suffer, leaving behind their families, in many cases their own children, to go and work for strangers in a foreign country. Often in a very congested environment. You know, the flats in Hong Kong are tiny. The maid sleeps in a room the size of a cupboard, if she's lucky. Some of them sleep on the kitchen floor. Another song from your experience in Asia is the Ballad of Nahoda Manis. It's a very long song, isn't it? Is it the longest song you've ever written? Yes, it is. I put it next to John Jenkins, which is the shortest song I've ever written. It's based on a story you heard in Brunei, isn't it? Yes, it's a retelling of a well-known Southeast Asian legend. I first knew of it from an English textbook that I was using when I taught in Brunei. I was teaching there for 2.5 years. It's Brunei's best-known story. There are similar legends in Indonesia and Malaysia. You know, the whole concept of filial piety is very important in Asian culture, and this is about a boy whose mother gives him everything to start him off in business, and he goes off overseas to make his fortune. And when he eventually comes back with a rich, snobbish wife, he doesn't want to know his old mother, who's become poor by devoting herself to his welfare. So, of course, his mother puts a curse on him and turns his ship and all its crew into a big rock in the Brunei River. Serves him right, too. There is actually a big rock in the Brunei River, shaped like a ship. So, this explains how it got there. The story is set in Kampong Ayer, the world's largest water village, which is right in Bandar Sri Begawan, the capital city of Brunei. Why is the song so long? I find it hard to listen to a song that goes on for more than 10 minutes. Well, you have to tell the whole story. Yes, but do you really have to pad it out with a chorus? You could have told the story in about half the time. Well, I'll let my listeners decide that for themselves, if there's any left by the end of the song. I tried to model this song on the traditional English and Scottish ballads collected by Francis James Child. I love the Child ballads. They tell wonderful, dramatic stories about basic things like love and death, often with a strong element of the supernatural. So I was using these as a model. Some of them go on even longer than this song. I guess people had more time in those days. Well, they didn't have television and newspapers. The ballads were often a bit like the tabloids of today, telling stories about the rich and famous. The news just took a lot longer to get around, with plenty of time to add lurid details as it got passed on. You've got a bit of Australian history here too. Red Ribbon Rebels. Yes, it shows the harsh reality of life on the Victorian goldfields and the beginnings of the push for democracy in Australia. It's a bit like what's happening now in the Middle East. The miners were facing unreasonable demands from an unelected government and decided it was time to stand up for themselves. The states in those days were just colonies of England. You know, one of the key events in Australian history is the Eureka Stockade, which is generally portrayed as a battle between the miners and the governing forces, but it was actually pretty much a massacre by the authorities. It was a turning point. The general population was sickened by the slaughter of the miners and turned against their rulers and eventually got self-government. But this song is not about the Eureka Stockade. No, it's one of the events leading up to it, the so-called monster meeting in Chewton, which did have a positive outcome. The authorities thought twice about increasing the miners' licence fees when they saw how upset people were getting. Let's have a look at a bit of this one.
There are no more forests of ironbark trees, not a blade of grass on the ground.
The dust in our mouths makes us choke with our thirst, but no water to drink can be found. For the creeks they are muddy from washing for gold, as tin dishes give way to the puddler's machine. The sly grog will kill us before we get old, for there's naught else to drink when the water's not clean. You're living at ease at the people's expense. You should know that we diggers can't pay any more. We'll monster your government until you see sense. You'll see how the red ribbon rebels can roar. We haven't mentioned Rita Hagen's Lawn yet. What exactly is that all about? This one's from personal experience. When I was travelling with my wife in Newfoundland last year, we stayed in a bed and breakfast for 3 nights so we could go to the Fairyland Folk Festival, and it was run by this extraordinary lady called Rita Hagen. I made the mistake of driving onto her lawn when we arrived because I saw another car in the driveway and I thought I'd be blocking it. And the trouble that I got into by driving onto her lawn is the starting point of this song. But it's mainly about the great stories she told, what a wonderful, generous, humorous person she is. I wrote this song while I was still there at the B&B and recorded it with Lou Dyke later, interspersed with bits of video we filmed at the bed and breakfast, so you can hear her delightful Irish accent in between the verses. I put this on YouTube, and a Canadian radio station interviewed me by telephone about it when I was back in Australia. It was on TV too, wasn't it? Yes, there's a Canadian television documentary series called Land and Sea, and they did an episode about the tragic events of Rita's life and how she managed to overcome them. And they featured my YouTube video in this program. And this is the version we hear on the CD. Yes, I felt I had to keep it just as it was, with her humorous comments included. When the inspectors come to check, they must. They'll scrutinise the bathrooms and look under beds for dust. But they won't go near the kitchen, lack of funds no doubt. They don't care about where the food goes in, just where it comes out. Whoever comes to Rita's door will get a cup of tea. It's the finest hospitality you'll ever like to see. Her tale will give you the biggest laugh you've had since you were born. But whatever you do, don't park your car on Rita Hagen's lawn.
You listened to me 100%.
Oh yes, of course.
Yes, you did.
You'll listen to.
And that's no wonder he could listen when you have it taped off. You put that away.
For a 4-star rating, every room should have its own TV. The walls are thin, said Rita, 4 stars don't bother me. We can only give you 3.5, based on the way things are. I'm sure you know, said Rita, we can stick that half a star. You mentioned irony before when you were talking about the collector. Is this a technique you use very often? Certainly. A lot of these songs use irony, particularly the type that involves what's known as an unreliable narrator. The Collector's an example of this, and so is The Devil Made Me Do It, where the church-going narrator is obviously a complete hypocrite. What about Animals Rule? Definitely ironic. It's a tongue-in-cheek comment on the animal rights movement. The trouble with irony is that some people just don't get it. When I sang this one live, I actually had people come up and thank me for singing a song promoting animal rights. John Jenkins. So you're not an animal lover then? Depends how they're cooked. Okay, we won't pursue that. Before we go, I want to quickly ask you about the title song that you say makes all this hang together. Who Needs Reality? Yes, it's basically a kind of satirical comment on the effects of modern technology, on the way we live and the way we communicate. Do I detect a reference to Woody Guthrie there? Of course, as you know very well. The chorus has echoes of his song, Ain't Got No Home in This World Anymore. Well, thanks Raymond for coming along today. No problem, I was here anyway. And I hope your CD does well on CD Baby. Thank you. I feel a bit strange talking to myself for so long. Don't they lock people up for this kind of behaviour? They probably should. Anyway, buy the CD, or even just download 2 or 3 of the songs, or just listen to them on YouTube. Save some money. I'm becoming quite a sportsman because it's good for me. My favourite game is tennis, I play it on my Wii. I don't think I'll get married, can't beat the effects of stimulating, simulated super cyber sex. Who needs reality? Real life is a bore. No reason for reality in this world